This is the Independence Wealth Podcast, where retirement strategies are made simple. Now here's your host and certified financial planner, Eric Nelson.
Welcome to the Independence Wealth Podcast. Today, on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Social Security, and more than just understanding the basics of Social Security, understanding what might be the best time for you and your family to start collecting Social Security. So Social Security is really like one of the most misunderstood decisions in retirement planning, is really when to claim your Social Security. A lot of people do believe, you take it at 62 because what if you're not here to make it up? And for some people, that is absolutely true. But Social Security is, while it's probably usually thought as an afterthought, it's probably one of the most costly decisions that you can make in your retirement. It can easily mean six figures gained or lost over your lifetime. So today I want to give clear rules for when delaying Social Security makes sense and when it doesn't. So a couple things that are important to understand is you can file for Social Security anytime between the age of 62 and 70, any month, any day. If you don't collect at 62, there's no rule that says you have to wait till 66 or 67 or 70. You could collect any day thereafter. Is there any way to scrub it out? I'm not going to be able to avoid it. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to roll with it today. No, you're good. So one of the most basic pieces of Social Security that people often get wrong is that you could collect anytime between age 62 and 70. If you don't collect at 62, there's no rule that says you have to wait until you're 66 or 67 or 70. Once you turn 62 years old, you can collect anytime thereafter at your desire. Obviously, your benefits do go up every month that you delay. So it's just something to keep in mind that there's no hard and fast rule. It says if you don't take your Social Security at 62, that you can't collect it the following year if for some reason your circumstances change. Every year that you delay your Social Security from your full retirement age, for most people today, that's 67 years old, and 70, you get an 8% guaranteed increase in your benefit each and every year that you defer. Social Security is interesting because it's not tied to the markets whatsoever. It is completely guaranteed by a Social Security formula that Social Security produces. But only the monthly benefit grows, not the total dollars that you receive over your lifetime. So in order to receive more from Social Security, you do have to live more, to live long enough for it to pay off. And obviously, that's the one thing that we don't know. The real math is beyond just understanding the break even, some circumstances that do go into why you should collect early. If you retire at 60, for example, a lot of times it'll make sense to start collecting Social Security early because you're going to be living off your retirement savings for an extended period of time. So reducing the amount of stress that you put on your portfolio to provide 100% of your lifestyle needs during retirement might make a lot of sense. So to kind of go over the break even, if you for most folks in most situations, once you live past 78 to 80, delaying until 70 years old usually wins. 9 out of 10 times, if I run a spreadsheet and we assume that my clients are going to live past 80 years old, when we put that on a spreadsheet, delaying past 70 almost always wins. Fortunately or fortunately, life doesn't happen on a spreadsheet. Understanding if longevity runs in your family, that would be a case where delaying would be beneficial. If your health is somewhat compromised, taking it earlier could be smarter. But note that even break-even math doesn't make sense. You have to layer on taxes, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, as well as understanding that the earnings test. So if you're still working past 62 or 63, it comes into play as well. So it's not there's no simple fast rule on when you should collect Social Security. Even if you told me today, you knew exactly how long you were going to live. One of the biggest pieces with Social Security, in my personal opinion, is when I meet with clients, oftentimes it's couples. And oftentimes we want to make sure that the surviving spouse is taken care of in the event that one predeceases the other. So spousal benefits are what entitles the lower earning spouse. So let's just use a make pretend situation. Let's say that my dad gets $2,000 a month from Social Security. My mom gets only $800 a month from Social Security because she stayed home and raised a family. Spousal benefits would actually entitle her to 50% of my father's benefits or $1,000 per month. Claiming early, so prior to their full retirement age, would actually reduce the spousal benefits proportionally. So making sure that you coordinate your strategy with your spouse and don't just act independently. and do what you think is best for you is important. The most important piece of Social Security, in my personal opinion, as I started to allude to a few moments ago, is survivor benefits. So, survivor benefits is where delaying often pays off the most. Survivor benefits are left to the surviving spouse. The surviving spouse is left with the higher of the two benefits, and that's what the surviving spouse will receive for the remainder of their life. So if the higher earner can delay their benefits up until age 70, the surviving spouse would receive the largest check that they could for the remainder of their life. So Social Security claiming decision is really a household decision, and it's not just an individual one. So making sure that you coordinate this with not just your spouse, but making sure that this makes sense in your overall financial situation, and you're not just making a Social Security election strategy based on gut feeling or micro planning that one piece of your plan alone. Another piece of Social Security to understand is taxes. So what's interesting or frustrating about Social Security is Social Security is a tax that you pay into the system, and then you pay a tax when you receive the benefits as well. Although they're not taxed the same as your other income, it's actually used in what's called a provisional income equation. Social Security benefits are only taxed up to 85% of the benefit, but for the vast majority of folks, you're going to be taxed on less than that based on your overall income. So basically, the way the income equation works is the lower your overall income, the lower proportion of your Social Security benefits you're taxed on. Another piece of Social Security to understand is if your income's high enough is to understand that IRMA or your Medicare surtax, it could be higher or lower depending on how much you receive from Social Security. So if you're 65 and you turn on your Social Security immediately, this could trigger IRMA depending on your lifestyle situation. It could also impact how much you pay in capital gains because, again, this is taxable income, albeit not exactly the same taxation as earned income. If you claim early while you're still working or doing Roth conversions, the conversions could actually increase the taxable portion of your Social Security. So you do lose some flexibility when it comes to Roth conversion planning. And many retirees do benefit from delaying Social Security and doing the Roth conversions in your early 60s to shrink the future RMDs that you might take and potentially reduce your lifetime tax drag on your portfolio. So as I keep mentioning, the most important thing with Social Security is to not only look at, your break even or how much you're going to leave for your spouse, but it's really to kind of look at this in a total picture of your entire retirement picture to make sure that you're taking your benefits at the right time, given all the other factors of your life. And lastly, I want to leave it here with understanding the earnings test. So if you start collecting Social Security prior to your full retirement age, so again, we're just going to use 67 because that's what it is for the vast majority of folks retiring today. Let's just use round numbers. For every dollar that you earn over $20,000, you're going to forego $1 of benefits for every two earned. So if your idea is to continue to work, collect your Social Security and save your Social Security benefits, invest it, and increase your nest egg, that sounds like a fantastic strategy, but the earnings test will work against you depending on your overall income. The only time that collecting Social Security while you're still working makes any sense is typically if you're going to be working in a very part-time manner and have limited income. Anything where you're earning 60,000 or above, you can potentially wipe away all of your Social Security benefits that you're entitled to during that time period. Now, the one caveat here is, practically speaking, you're giving up the benefit, but you do actually kind of reaccrue it over time. So what I mean by that is if you retired at 62, collected Social Security, and you made 40 grand, for example, and you gave up, let's just say $10,000 of Social Security benefits to make the math simple, the other uncollected portion that you forego would actually accrue as if you never collected it. So it's not all for naught, but it is something to consider to make sure it actually makes sense to, collect Social Security while you're still working. And to at the same point, to kind of go over two quick, really kind of punchy points, where delaying makes the most sense is typically if you're trying to maximize the survivor benefit for your spouse. So if you have any concern whatsoever about longevity in your family or longevity with your spouse, and you want to make sure that they're left with the largest benefit possible, there's definitely a strong case to be made that you should delay your Social Security as long as possible. The other piece would be if you have assets to bridge the gap. Social Security gives you an 8% guaranteed rate of return or guaranteed increase on the monthly income that you're going to receive. There are no 8% monthly benefit increase guarantees that exist other than with Social Security. Another place where it would make sense to delay would be if you're doing Roth conversions or some tax planning strategies. Not taking Social Security kind of frees up some room for you to do those strategies during early retirement. Now, on the contrary, where claiming early makes more sense is if you have significant health issues and you truly may not be here to make up the difference, it certainly would make some sense to collect Social Security while you're still here. If you need income now and you have more limited assets and you don't want to withdraw from your portfolio while markets are volatile, perhaps it would make sense to collect your Social Security earlier. If you are the lower earner in your household, so if you're the lower earning spouse and your spouse is delaying their benefit, but you still want to have something in the interim, collecting your Social Security sooner would definitely make sense. And lastly, if you expect to retire very early and don't expect to be working much at all up until your full retirement age, it would certainly make sense to collect your Social Security early. So to kind of bring this conversation full circle, I know I've said it 100 times now, but the most important piece of this is to make sure that you're coordinating your strategy with your overall retirement plan. You're assessing the longevity in your family, really taking a good hard look and trying to figure out how long you and or your spouse will be here. It's funny when it comes to Social Security, people tend to think like, hey, I'm not going to live that long. I should take it early. But when it comes to like other things planning in life, they assume they're going to live a really long time. So it's really important to kind of think that through. The reality is with today's modern medicine, oftentimes, one spouse will be here at age 90 in a lot of situations. So delaying would certainly make sense in many circumstances. Understanding how taxes will implicate your Social Security, will delaying throw off Roth conversion strategies or RMD planning. And that's something to consider. And then lastly is to understand what the household income will look like. Can you afford to delay? Do you have the sufficient assets to bridge the gap to make sure that understanding when Social Security is taken, it's really a big decision. And you want to make sure that it's well thought out with your overall retirement plan. So with that being said, I invite you to reach out with any questions. Feel free to check out our website, independencewealth.com. And like I said, any questions you have, feel free to reach out. We'd love to chat. Thanks and have a great day.